Welcome to our 2022 to 2023 History Fair project on Frontiers in History. This frontier is an idea leading to a place in the most effective way possible. The Space Shuttle program was and is the leading force in the affordable yet effective transportation into space, whether that be the manufacturing of the ISS or the future plans to reach Mars. Without the Space Shuttle program, SpaceX and Blue Origin's or other modern space exploration and habitation brands may never have existed without the Space Shuttle's program of cheap and affordable yet effective exploration of space. Our project will go over how the Space Shuttle program was started and why it was started, how it worked, and that being how this method of exploration and industrialization of space was done affordably and effectively, and lastly, how it affects our lives today. First though, we must look at the beginning roots of the program.
The Space Shuttle program was set up for a number of goals that NASA intended on being successfully achieved. The first of these goals was to have an efficient manner of bringing people to and from what would now be called the ISS. To industrialize space, that would mean creating the International Space Station and setting up satellites in low Earth orbit. These satellites were mainly used in telecommunications and observational departments. Third, just to get astronauts to space with a reusable rocket system, a rocket system that was also cheap. Whether or not that cheap reusable rocket will come back to hunt them was important to them, but less than relevant. At the time, NASA commissioned a rocket to be created that allowed for these goals to be met. This idea was sent to 4 different companies to design. Each one of these aerospace companies had designed a 2-stage vehicle. This was all done on November 1st, 1969, and by 1970, the words space and shuttle were first put together, a fitting name indeed. How did this 2-stage space shuttle work?
Do you believe the Space Shuttle program was vital in creating a commune like the ISS that allowed for almost world peace arrangements when it comes to spacefaring?
Absolutely. Even during the design phase, we included several different countries to build portions of the ISS, as you mentioned, and once the ISS was started being put together, we launched several astronauts, scientists, and engineers that were all from different countries as well. It expanded diversity between the types of people, both male and female. And we even worked closely with the Russians, who for a long time we were Cold War with, and later we partnered with them, and they still help us today to a certain extent, not like they used to, but I absolutely think it allowed us to get to know other people on a more, on a closer basis, and improved, our relationships around the world.
During the Space Shuttle program, did you ever work on or around the satellites and part of the ISS that were being set up in orbit?
Yes, I worked around them. I didn't work on any of them. And back to my earlier days when I worked on the crawler, we also took care of something that was called the payload transporter, and it was used to move the satellites around from their processing buildings. One of them was called the vertical processing facility, and we would use the payload transporter to actually transport it to where it got put into the shuttle. So we would go in there with this vehicle, and we would basically pick up the satellite. It would be put into a housing. I used to call it a lunchbox, but it would be put into that, and then we would take it over to the pad where it would be lifted up and then put into the shuttle via the rotating service structure. I also saw some of the space station components. They were inserted in what we call a horizontal position with the same vehicle. So it was really kind of cool for me because I was able to look at a satellite. And if you ever seen one close up, they look like something out of Star Wars. They're all glittering with gold pieces on them and antennas and stuff sticking out of them. It's really a different aspect of looking at parts of the the space program.
First and foremost, the Space Shuttle used a 2-stage system of launch consisting of 2 solid rocket boosters, an external fuel tank, and the orbiter which carries astronauts. The 2 solid rocket boosters and the external fuel tank detached off of the orbiter after the fuel had run dry after launch. Unfortunately, these pieces and the construction of them and the launch costs $10.6 billion per launch, and in all launches cost NASA $209 billion. However, these rockets were able to be used 9 times a year when there were only 5 space shuttles, allowing for the cost to effectively cover itself. But how was this done? The space shuttle as a whole was not cheap, but because the space shuttle was made so well, it could be reused 9 times a year, with the only downside being the rocket boosters and external fuel tank were not reusable. During these missions, the shuttles were used for deploying satellites in low Earth orbit, like the Hubble Space Telescope, and building the ISS. In fact, the main criticism of the space shuttle program was not of the shuttle, but its exterior rockets used for launch due to their expensive nature and wastefulness. The space shuttle itself was made of aluminum alloys and tiles made of porous silicon material that is extremely heat resistant. This allows for extensive re-entry of the Earth's atmosphere. The aluminum alloy is the main material used for the shuttle, as it is cheaper but also very durable for spaceflight, whilst the silicone tiles made the shell of the aluminum alloys, as they were primarily used for re-entry. In fact, without these tiles, the space shuttle would burn up upon re-entry. How though did this affect us in our lives today, and how was this system improved upon after the programs ended in 2011?
Simply put, without the space shuttle program, SpaceX would not exist. SpaceX took all the flaws of the space shuttle and improved upon them immensely. For starters, every part of the rockets used by SpaceX are reusable. Once again, the launch is 2 stages, yet the rockets are reusable, and so is the orbiter. Another great improvement made by the SpaceX is that the orbiter is not as big as the shuttle. See, another problem with the shuttle was how big it was. However, the reason for its size had nothing to do with the luxury for the passengers, but for the missions it was sent on. The back compartment held the satellite or the part for the ISS, whilst the front compartment was used for the astronauts. Now, SpaceX uses a reusable rocket for satellites and for main space flight. Now, that Falcon 9 rockets provide supplies to the ISS and bring astronauts to it as well. Everything is reusable, except for the fuel. The frontier in history explored by the Space Shuttle program allowed for efficient and reusable space exploration orbiters, and we are now capitalizing on that today with the companies like SpaceX. Starlink, SpaceX's Wi-Fi system will be easily obtained in rural and less fortunate countries due to their capitalization on efficient and reusable low Earth orbit entry. Not to mention, we may be able to go to low Earth orbit for the fun in our very near future, allowing everyday Joe to see the final frontier, whereas before you must be highly trained and professional astronaut. It is safe to say that because of the Space Shuttle program, we are not allowed to see the uses of Final Frontier may have including deep space exploration.
In conclusion, the Space Shuttle program was and is key in our industrialization of space and our understanding of it, and how it can benefit us. From how it started, of needing affordable and reusable space exploration, to its construction allowing for this. And now, to how it affects everyday lives and, more importantly, the lives of others. The Space Shuttle program was the first frontier in our history to do this reusable and cheap exploration of the final frontier, and without it, our lives and understanding of the world around us may never have been the same.